Welcome to Orthodontic Smiles, the podcast designed for all dentists and their staffs who practice orthodontics. This podcast is brought to you by the American Orthodontic Society.
Hi, my name's Dr. Brad Williams, and I've practiced orthodontics for over 35 years, and over those years, I've had some fantastic teachers like Dr. Bill Wyatt, Dr. Bob Garrity, Dr. Dave Jackson, and many, many more. And I'm honored now to be teaching orthodontics to a whole new generation of general and pediatric dentists. I want to personally invite you to enroll in one of my basic or intermediate hands-on courses through the American Orthodontic Society. We are committed to provide your entire staff the support and training you need to launch orthodontics in your pediatric or general dental practice. And to make the hands-on experience in my classes the best possible, I've partnered with an outstanding and very ethical company called OrthoArch to provide all the orthodontic supplies my students need. When my students start treating patients in their offices, they too will benefit as I have in partnering with OrthoArch for all their orthodontic supply needs. You can contact OrthoArch at www.orthoarch.com. See you in class.
Orthodontic Smiles podcast is very lucky to have the president and co-owner of OrthoArch with us tonight. And let me tell you why I asked Mr. Doug Bukaty to be on with us. He is one of the guys that was in the room on the day that Allign Products developed their total innovation. And as you know, in orthodontics today, we are at a precipice of whether or not we are going to go with brackets or we're going to go with the new innovations of Allign products. He was there. He was there for the beginning, for the very start of Allign products. And so I asked him to be on because I needed to put it on our podcast, the history. And you know how important I feel about the history of orthodontics, GP orthodontics, and orthodontics. And I wanted to make sure that he put it on the record as to the history of how things got started. So welcome, Mr. Doug Bukaty. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being on our program.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Well, let's get started here because this is really kind of an interesting thing. I mean, we've had your co-owner of OrthoArch on, not doctor, but I always think of him as doctor. He's been in orthodontics all his life, Lindsey Brim, and you've come under that title now as co-owner of OrthoArch. But you come from a background of orthodontics, and how did you get started in this career? This is really unique, and I understand how you got there now, but how did you start, and how many years ago was that?
Well, I started off in orthodontics with a division of Johnson & Johnson called A Company Orthodontics back in 1994. And I worked for them as J&J for a couple of years prior to them selling the company to a private equity group who then in return sold it to Cyberon Dental Specialties not soon after the launch of the Damon bracket. So I really started my career back with Johnson & Johnson in the mid-90s.
But that Damon bracket didn't lead us directly to Allign products, did it?
No, it didn't. Actually, Allign was started when Zia Chitsty, who was our CEO and founder, he was actually an orthodontic patient, and he was treated with lingual appliances, and he really didn't enjoy his treatment. And he discovered, after having not worn his retainer for a month, that when he put it back in, that his teeth would move back into position. And because of his background in computer science, and because of his knowledge of really the whole CAD process, he was able to create really the engine behind the Invisalign system, which is the Treat software, or ClinCheck, as most doctors refer to it as.
Doug, you're telling me that a non-dentist invented Allign technologies.
Correct.
Wow. I would have never guessed that. I did not know that, and I bet you 99% of the people out there that use Allign products did not know that. So where did it go from there? Once this guy did not like the way he was treated, he used his concepts of computers to develop a product.
He did. He actually, how I got involved with Allign is that my previous manager at J&J became employee number 6 at Invisalign, and he brought me over to be one of the first reps hired in the organization, the first wave as they call it. And and from there we scaled the business. And so, he, along with the leadership team, we obviously got orthodontists on board to start trying the product, and really built the company from scratch, from a small little office in a strip mall in Santa Clara, or rather Sunnyvale, to the size of it is today, which I think it's well over 10,000 employees.
That's amazing. Tell me about how that got started. I mean, how many orthodontists were involved? Now, I'm going to just bring our listeners back to the day when this got started. Actually, GPs were not allowed to do Invisalign initially, and so what I'm asking. The reason I'm asking this is that how many orthodontists were involved in the overall beginnings of and the development of the product?
Well, so internally we had Dr. Ross Miller, who was really in charge of our clinical development. And of course, in the field, we had a lot of key opinion leaders, and these were doctors, specialists that we had worked with in our past, who came on and really started treating cases. Because, you can, as everyone who's used Invisalign, you can move teeth almost any way you want to on the ClinCheck program, but does it actually work in the mouth was the big question. So initially out of the gate, and I joined the company in 99, it was founded in 97, I believe, and they got the clinical trials going right away, and then, of course, modified the product. So right out of the gate, we would certify doctors with a live video program with Dr. Ross Miller. So we'd have courses that were all over the country in the major cities, and he would be on video really educating the doctors on what was required from records and how to work the ClinCheck software, how to treatment plan the case. And what people see today is light years ahead of the technology when it was first introduced, and how the cases were staged and to where it has evolved to the treatment program that they have now. So there wasn't a set number of doctors out of the gate that were part of the company. Rather, it was Zia and Kelsey and the ex-A company sales team developing the KOL bullpen, and then getting doctors and clinicians to get out there and try it in their practice, along with help from UOP and their involvement in Invisalign as well.
Well, it's interesting to me. I'm always thinking about how you conceptually put something in at its start and develop it from that point on. And so I'm thinking to myself, here's a guy who knows nothing really about orthodontics. He just knows that he's not happy about being treated that way. And he develops a product that is really totally unique. I mean, using 3D imaging and 3D printing, which was very, very rare back then. And he is now an innovator in orthodontics within a matter of the inception of the product. So it's
well, right.
It's almost scary to me to think that there's a guy there that is not an orthodontist or a dentist that has developed a product that is supposed to move teeth.
Well, it's interesting when you look back on the history, and it's been 20 years, and you look at how he developed the company and how he, achieved everything, not just from a dental perspective, but a business perspective, and how you raise money, and how he had to pitch the idea of wireless orthodontics and the market, and how enormous the market was. And I don't think anybody believed, and looking back, you see how this company has grown. And he just knew there was a tremendous amount of demand, which primarily were adults. They wanted straight teeth, but they didn't want to wear brackets and wires. They just, refused to wear it. I was a patient as an adult. I was treated with the first generation Damon brackets, and I can tell you it wasn't much fun. So I knew I would have jumped at the opportunity to be treated with aligners.
Well, you were involved in that. Was there an actual market analysis done of whether or not this was going to be a successful venture?
I'm sure there was. I wasn't privy to that at the time. It was primarily Zia and Kelsey doing the roadshow in the Bay Area and raising money, and then raising money to fund the idea, to get trials going, and then to commercialize the product. And, the first set of models that were created were incredibly expensive. And so, they would create a set of models, move the teeth, create another set of models. It was actually done through a destructive scanning process before the CT scanning process. So it was very expensive.
So this was the evolution part of the aligner therapy.
Right. And so he believed that he could reach an economy of scale where if enough people were interested in being treated without braces, that they could scale and build this business to where it could become profitable, which it absolutely has.
Well, that's where you were brought in, wasn't it?
Correct. I was brought in when they started to commercialize the product. So they were still doing research on the product, but I was brought in to really, as a territory manager in Chicago, covering really the whole upper Midwest. So from Ohio to really Utah was my territory. And now I think they have 300 plus sales reps. But, my primary responsibility was to, using my network, go out and convince doctors to come sit in a weekend course and learn how they can treat cases orthodontically without any brackets and wires. And it was, quite honestly, out of the gate, it was sort of a tough sell because you were selling with a computer program, showing them ClinChecks, and this is before high-speed internet, and you would download ClinCheck, and it would take 5 hours to do so, and it was really, quite honestly, it was a lot of fun because it was something that hadn't been done before, and we had doctors that didn't have computers in their office. They were using the green ledgers, so for them, they had to actually go out and buy a computer to treat patients, which it was a lot of fun.
That was an innovation. There's no question about it. I remember back in the day when we didn't have computers, and who would have ever thought that you would be treating your patients based on what you saw on a computer. So this innovation in aligner therapy, how specific did they feel that they could predict what the aligners would move the teeth to? In other words, did they have a concept of how good they could be at the time? Because it's improved.
Well,
There's no question it's improved. But at the time, you throw out a product and all of a sudden it's not as good as you thought it was going to be on the drawing board.
Well, so like any innovative technology, you're going to learn as you go. And initially, Allign believed in based on what they learned from orthodontists that the maximum biological range is about 1 millimeter per month, and so they would program in about 0.5 millimeter of movement per stage into the aligners. And then, with the technology that was available at the time, using, the EX30 material, they would build out cases. And what they soon learned is that a lot of movements were very difficult. Some movements were a little easier than they were with fixed. Then came the development of attachments, the 1x1x4, the horizontal attachment, the round attachment, for retention, when you had short crowns and so forth. So really based on feedback from its advisory board as well as the orthodontist, Allign was able to improve and modify the product. So you have, sort of the clinical piece to it, and then it's, how do we help our doctors really maintain and improve our brand, because a lot of these cases initially had to go through course correction and refinements, and so we modified our pricing structure to accommodate the doctors and really to help control messaging that, hey, this is all part of orthodontics. It's part of chairside adjustments, if you will. We had doctors using buttons and elastics to achieve some of the more complicated movements of extrusion.
Did some of the doctors give innovations as they were using the product?
Absolutely. Some of our best ideas came from wet-fingered doctors in the field saying, hey, have you thought of it? If you thought of doing it this way? And we would go back and we would run it past our KOLs and we'd incorporate it into our philosophy. One of the things that we did at the time, doctors, they would approve all of their cases as they still do. So it was their treatment plan, and we'd always push back on the doctors and say, look, this is your case, this is your treatment plan. How do you want to treat the case? And then we would try to express and clean check the doctor's vision for this case.
All right, let's get into something a little hairy here. How much responsibility was on Allign and how much responsibility was on the doctor back then? Now, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about back then.
Well, Allign never approved a case. What we would do is when we received the treatment plan and go back to when they would send it in paper, we would try to read the forms and then predict how the doctor wanted to move the teeth. So you had doctors that just wanted to use aligners to upright a molar for an implant. And so that case, of course, was a lot different than a doctor that wanted to, say, straighten lower incisor crowding. So we would say, hey, look, this is another tool for you to use. How do you want to set up the case? And initially, a lot of doctors would say, hey, quite honestly, I don't know. Currently I'll put in a wire and then I will make adjustments as I see fit. But it's as much as art as following the case as it is a science. And we sort of took that same philosophy and approach in the way we educated our doctors. There were movements that just weren't as predictable. And so with that, we would say, we might advise using a particular attachment because our history and our data would support that you needed a 1x1x4 to rotate a bicuspid, right? Yeah. And you needed to overcorrect that rotation because it would try to spring back on you. So, it was a lot of the doctors, our clinicians, our customers, working with, and I'm referring to the virtual orthodontic technicians that I think currently are still in Costa Rica, and making sure that these cases are set up exactly the way they wanted them set up. So I think there was, initially there was, oh, hey, you just take an impression and you send it off to Allign and they send you back aligners and you're good to go. And really that wasn't the case if it was just that easy. Some cases it turned out it was very easy for them to be treated because they were very minor in their complexity, orthodontic relapse cases, very, very simple movements where I would say it didn't require a complex diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this. There was a period of time when Allign has been out. The only people that were allowed to use Allign products were orthodontists. And there became let me just say, the GP market of orthodontics was becoming a little bit agitated by the fact that Allign was not allowing highly qualified GPs who did orthodontics to express themselves with this new technology. And there was a change. All of a sudden, Allign decided to go with the GP market. Give me a little bit of history about that.
Oh, I'd be happy to. There was a lawsuit, and a dentist sued Allign based on the current laws, which stated that dentists can practice orthodontics, and the doctor sued Allign and won. And I believe in that lawsuit it stated that we had to attempt to certify and train a certain number of dentists every year moving forward.
And so dentists meaning non-orthodontists?
Correct.
Okay.
Meaning that we had to open up Invisalign to the general dentist, correct.
I understand. And from that point on, it opened up into the ability for GPs to be able to do Allign technologies.
Correct. It opened it up. And so everything was more or less the same. Our duct locator for our leads,
what an incredible market you had at that moment.
Oh, it was tremendous. I think it's, at least for me and my experience, the power of direct-to-consumer marketing, where I think for the first time in orthodontics, a commercial operation, that being Invisalign, controlled patient flow.
Yeah.
And
that's exactly what we started to see. We started to see billboards coming up and go into your GP to get orthodontics done.
It was really game-changing technology, not just on both the commercial side as well as the orthodontic side. So it was cutting edge from the way they brought patients to doctors, going after a segment of the market that of patients that really didn't want braces, patients who had braces before that didn't want to go back into fixed orthodontics. And as we like to say, and I believe they probably still do, is Invisalign expanded the pie. And so their goal was to grow orthodontic awareness. And they certainly knew that in doing so, a lot of the patients that came forward would elect to go into fixed appliances. But we also knew a lot of those patients, as Allign could prove clinically that they could do more and more complex cases, that we would be able to grow the market and grow the percentage of patients interested in being treated.
Doug, you did grow the market. You grew it so well that so many people started doing orthodontics. But let me talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly here. The good, the bad, and the ugly is that some of the practitioners took on more than they could chew and ended up with poor quality results with the Allign product. Now, was that due to the Allign product, or was that due to their inexperience in using the product? And I preface that only because there are so many new products that are coming out on the market that are so much better than Allign was when it first got started. So I'm curious as to why so many people had a bad taste in their mouth after treating hundreds of patients and then all of a sudden not getting the results they wanted.
So what we saw...
Did I put you in a bad spot there, Doug? I didn't mean to do that.
No, not at all. What we saw when we'd actually do patient follow-up surveys and compare that to surveys done with traditional orthodontic appliances, we found that patients treated with Invisalign were equally satisfied as patients treated with fixed. You would have, but you have to remember, it's not the appliance that's treating the patient, it's the doctor that's treating the patient. And so if they came in and they were, let's just say, a class 2 malocclusion, and they had 6 millimeters of overjet or greater, they could be a potential surgical candidate, but they didn't want to have surgery. But they wanted their teeth level and aligned. Would Invisalign work? Yeah, it would work. Would they be, would they qualify for, a Larry Andrews 6 keys of ideal occlusion?
Absolutely
no,
not.
They wouldn't. But was the patient happy and excited? And absolutely they were. Some would argue, well, the patient did.
So were patients that have been treated in 6-month smiles and the partial braces type concepts. They as long as their front teeth were straight, they were happy. But those of us who practice orthodontics to Andrew's 6 keys and the absolute perfection that's necessary when you're treating one of your patients, that back then, and I'm not saying now, I'm saying back then, it was not matching up to what our expectations were.
Well, and let me go one step further. What was happening is that the ClinCheck software program was, you can move teeth virtually however you like. You could see collisions in red. I'm referring to their software program. But did that always translate into that movement within the patient's mouth? And the answer is no. There are some movements that were more predictable. There are some movements that were less predictable. So the ClinCheck, which is the software program, could line up and look great, but the patient's teeth weren't that straight.
Right.
Thus, time to do a mid-course correction. And yes, there were patients that said, you know what, I don't want to wear these anymore. I want to go into fixed, or I'm unhappy. And were there patients like there out in the market? Absolutely, there were.
And were there doctors out in the market not happy?
Oh, absolutely. Well, as the consumers were unhappy, the patients were unhappy, the doctors were unhappy. But quite honestly, they were excited because they obviously looked better than when they came in.
Oh yeah,
but
there's no question.
They did not. But did they meet the standards of the doctor? There were patients that were not happy, sure. And I say, just like with any type of orthodontic treatment,
sure.
There are some patients, a lot of the Invisalign patients, Invisalign came out at a significant premium, and the patients were crazy about their smile, and they wanted it absolutely perfect. And some doctors say, hey, you know what, I just like with patients today, you just can't please everybody. So I would say early on, as the technology was in its infancy, and some would argue you go back to Kesseling back in 1945, moving teeth with removable positioners, right? That certainly wasn't exact science back then. And Allign, the science has improved tremendously and only getting better. And competition will do that to you, right?
Yeah,
and you see sort of an evolution. And so, and I know we've spoken about, sort of the like next steps, like where do we go from here? And there are a significant amount of changes that are happening in the broader market with competition to Allign, and then on the supply side as well.
Well, let's talk about that, because you've given us. I got to tell you, this first segment of Orthodontic Smiles has been remarkable, because you've given us the history of aligner therapy, and I think that is something that is going to go down in the annals of Orthodontic Smiles podcast as something that no one has ever talked about. I know that I didn't know about some of the things. I know that majority of our members of the American Orthodontic Society and the GP orthodontic community never knew about some of the things. And I know the GP, who is not a member of the American Orthodontic Society or the GP orthodontic community, never knew anything. So thank you so much for bringing us that history, and it's going to go down in our podcast as something that we can always look back on and know the history of this. But what has it done? What has this aligner therapy done to the broader orthodontic market with fixed therapy? I'm always amazed at how much money the orthodontic manufacturers are putting into brackets, where on the other side it's almost like somebody is attacking them with aligner therapy. So I don't know which way they're going to go. Which way are they going to develop more and innovative fixed therapies, or are they going to start thinking about more aligner therapies? And you're at the forefront of this. You're one of the guys that's going to take a company to greater heights. And so I'd like to know what your thoughts are.
Well, so, we were talking before about the predictability of aligner movement. And one of the advances that's being made is made in the actual material itself. Align SmartTrack material, for example, is a lot more, it's more comfortable. The movements are more predictable, and it maintains its force for a greater period of time. And the results have been just fantastic for the clinicians that I've spoken with. So there's been a technology improvement into the material itself. With the advent of 3D printing, and as 3D printers continue to drop in cost, doctors are putting 3D printers in their office, so they can actually take a scan, digitize the models. They can do it all right there in their office. They can take the scan, digitize the model, treatment plan the case, print the aligners, and do the CNC process, or have one of their assistants, trim those aligners. So same day aligners are available today. So where manufacturing and manufacturers are, yes, you have your largest manufacturers. First of all, most everybody at this point is getting into the aligner space. It's too big of a market to ignore. But they also are investing in fixed technology as well. Self-ligating brackets it's a fantastic way of moving the teeth. The friction is less. The friction is less. The pain is less, and it's faster. So call it the best of all worlds. So there's investment being made in self-ligating brackets. You've probably heard of the Damon bracket, and I was certainly treated in it, and that was over 20 years ago. So improvements have been made in self-ligating. And then what we're finding, and where we would like to take our organization, is in the direction of sort of the best of both worlds, because there are movements that are difficult with aligners. And so the approach that we are taking, we being, Lindsay and I and Mike, is that we want to be the supplier that any doctor can come to for their fixed needs. If it's self-ligating, with our New Star bracket, our wires, and with aligners. And we are working on adding aligners to our armament of product. We believe that the most difficult movements should be done at the beginning of treatment to make cases that are Class 2 or Class 3, Class 1, and then at the same time be able to treat them with aligner therapy. So combination treatment.
Oh, I agree. I think that's the new thing. I think like your product, the D2, for Class 2 alignment of the molars is unique. And then once you've got those teeth in the right position, you can go direct into an Invisalign product. There's no question about it.
So what we say, a lot of patients will come in and they're not an Invisalign candidate or they're not an aligner candidate, and the doctors want to treat them to Class 1, as we talked about earlier. And the only way to get them there is to say, look, can we treat you? Can we just straighten your interior teeth? Sure, we could. But you really need to go through some fixed therapy first. And, as you probably know, after about a year of treatment, patients can get burned out. But if you can put them in fixed D2 or self-ligating brackets to level and align, get those complicated movements done on the front end of treatment, then your aligner cost on the back end of treatment is going to be a fraction of what it would be if it was a full Invisalign case or a full case from one of the major suppliers, because you're reducing the number of liners needed to treat that case. And quite frankly, you're getting the roots in a position that they need to be at, which is difficult to achieve with aligners.
I like that concept. I think that's, get the molars where they need to be. Let the teeth erupt into the proper position or as close to the proper position as possible. Put them in fixed ligated brackets and then go to aligners for the finish. I've not really thought too much about that at the completion, but I think I would like to try that, and I think that sounds unique to me. I don't think I've heard anybody say that. I've heard everyone in the marketplace say, okay, let's get the molars in the right spot, and then let's go directly to aligners. But that is sometimes a long road from Class 2 to completion. But the self-ligating would get you there much quicker.
It sure would.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question then, and this is maybe topical at this point, but what do you think about do-it-yourself braces or do-it-yourself aligners?
It's personally, I'm not a fan, and there's been, I recommend that everybody, Google Smile Direct Club. There's been new legislation written that I think will protect the patient, most importantly, and make it a requirement that patients, first of all, understand who their treating doctor is in the state of California, and that having a doctor present for these scans is required because it is a dental procedure.
And x-rays are required.
What Smile Direct Club has done is they've developed a model that essentially removes doctors from the process, from seeing the patient. They still need a licensed clinician per state, and this is the opinion of myself. You need to see a doctor. You need to be properly diagnosed. Doing this, with a box of impressions, you send your impressions off. It gets scanned in. You get the aligners back, or going into one of their scanning centers. To me, that's taking medicine into your own hands, and I'm not a fan. What it does, how people have to look at this is when you look at the generations, and I'm certainly not a millennial, and how things are becoming so incredibly convenient. You want food, you don't have to even go out and get fast food. You can just order food on Grubhub or Uber Eats and it's delivered. Your aligners can be delivered. And so you think about it, would I have ever said, hey, I'm going to get my teeth straight, I'm going to go online, order a kit, send it off? I wouldn't do it, but millennials will. So that I think what's really important is that the doctors are able to communicate the benefits of going into their practice, the benefits of having the bite corrected the right way the first time. And that really a great smile starts with good functional occlusion. And so every dentist, orthodontist needs to educate their patients on what a good smile looks like.
That's what you're talking about,
and how it starts.
You're talking about educating the patient, educating them so that they know that it's not as simple as it seems.
It never is. And to get out in front of it so that, a patient, one of your patients, they don't come in and say, gosh, I went with Smile Direct Club and my bite's funny. Well, why didn't you call me? I didn't know you did it. And, you talked about it a while ago. So to me, because of the influx of marketing and the marketing dollars, and of course they just went public and they raised a significant amount of money. So, the airwaves are being flooded with ads for Candid, Smile Direct Club, and other companies out there. It's more important than ever for our customers, for our doctors, to educate their patient on exactly what they're getting and to be proactive and what can be expected.
I agree.
And quite honestly, and the difference between, we're talking about 6 months to a year between a smile that's going to last a lifetime and a smile that has a chance of relapsing quickly.
Or having a problem with any one of the teeth that are in these trays. You weren't there that evening, but we had Congressman Paul Gosar speak to us at the American Orthodontic Society meeting in Washington. He happens to be a dentist. And one of the questions that was posed to him was, what is the federal government going to do about protecting the American people from these do-it-yourself innovations in Allign therapy? And his comments were pretty poignant in the fact that the federal government has given the authority to the states to protect the patient. And that's done through the boards of dentistry. And sure enough, I'm not exaggerating here, 3 weeks later, the California Board of Dentistry came out with their specific guidelines as to what needed to be done, that a dentist had to be in charge of the case, that the scan had to be done by the practicing dentist, and that there was a dentist assigned specifically to the aligner therapy. And boy, he hit it right on the head as to what was going to happen, and sure as heck it did happen. Within 3 weeks, we found out that now there are laws or rules in place at least in the state of Florida, in the state of California, and I expect in future there will be many more states that will adopt the same program.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Well, tell me a little bit about what you guys, as a company of OrthoArch, are planning for the future, because some of your plans are innovative and actually will include some aligner therapy. So tell us about it.
Well, yes, we are, as you know, and I know you've known Lindsay and Mike for a long time. They've always been very progressive
30 years
in their
I've known both those guys. I mean, they're amazing people, I tell you.
They really are. They really are. They're fantastic people and great partners for me to have and for me to learn from. So at OrthoArch, we're really building our company for the future. We want to build on what's been great, proven technology, which is straight wire, and straight wire self-ligating brackets, clear brackets, and then really build an aligner platform off of that, so that doctors will have the option of, to the point I was making earlier, starting off with fixed appliances, using the D2, correcting the bite, and then finishing with aligners. If they want to make aligners in their practice, fantastic. Be involved on the 3D printing side. If they want to send them out to a local lab to have them print them, okay. Send them out to a third-party company, okay. But really, putting the control back into the doctor's hands. And Lindsay and I share that vision, is we want to make our doctors, the most progressive doctors, and doctors that are also the most successful and have the most successful practices, because part of being innovative as a company is helps our customers be innovative to their patients. And we know that the industry is changing, that it's evolving and growing with this technology, and we want to be on the cutting edge of this technology. And the good news is the price of a lot of this technology is coming down. The cost of 3D print models is coming down. The liner materials, the resins, it's all coming down as technology improves. And people can make things obviously a lot faster and a lot cheaper. And I think the dentists and orthodontists are going to really benefit from it.
Well, it seems like you guys are sitting on the cusp of new innovations and a bigger and better company, and I congratulate you and Lindsay and Mike for that. I mean, you guys have worked for years and years in the industry. We know you very well, and congratulate you for that. And I got to thank you so much, Doug, for being on Orthodontic Smiles podcast and giving us the history, the real history of aligner therapy. This will be something very interesting to anybody that's doing any kind of aligner therapy, because I know they don't know the history of this, and this is something really important, and I think to document it in a podcast is extremely important. So thank you so much, Doug Bukaty, for being on our podcast. You've been a remarkable guest, and I hope to have you back in the future to talk about some of your new innovations with OrthoArch. Thank you so much for being on our broadcast.
Thank you for having me, Ed. I appreciate it.
With innovation, quality, patient comfort, and efficiency as their goal, Henry Schein Orthodontics has once again achieved a new and exciting breakthrough in aligner therapy, introducing a clearly different aligner system, a comprehensive aesthetic solution for adults and teens. The SLX Clear Aligner System is uniquely clear, provides an excellent fit, and offers numerous treatment and workflow efficiencies. With over 50,000 patients treated with this innovative aligner technology, doctors and patients can be confident in the SLX aligner performance for a full range of minor, moderate, and comprehensive treatments. Jumpstart your SLX cases with the Carrier Motion Appliance to provide the most efficient and aesthetic treatment solution available. For more information, contact your Henry Schein representative or email aligners@henryschein.com. This is your host, Dr. Ed Gonzalez. I want to thank you for listening to Orthodontic Smiles today. If you enjoyed our broadcast, please click the subscribe button. We'll be in touch with you in the future about our further broadcasts. Thanks for listening.